How are you? Emilio Espinoza. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
I did. Okay.
How
Emilio.
how am I, or do you want me to do a quick introduction?
Um. Well, I guess we'll just explain our dynamic first, and then who we were back then, like starting off with kids,
Sure.
and then like where we kind of first met, and then like how the disconnect happened, and then now we're like back but better, and we're older, wiser. Well, I have, I'm very blessed to say this, one of my brothers with me today, Emilio Espinoza. Great man. Very inspired by him in his entrepreneurship journey. Dude, we met, gosh, it's got to be like when we were 6 or 7. Like going back to little kids, uh, just running around Mokina, in school together. Had a great friendship. Did baseball together. Did we do football together?
No, I didn't do football.
Didn't do football.
No.
I think we did soccer though.
Did we?
I think we did do soccer.
I'm sorry you had to see that.
Did you play for like the communal Mokina?
Yeah, Mokina just Park District.
Yeah.
We're all throwing
then
on
we
pennies and yeah.
definitely played together
Okay.
then. So I got to know Emilio just through kind of school and that, and we slowly became friends. Our families got to know each other, and then I switched schools. I went to a private Christian school, and the crazy thing is that in Mokina, no one knew that I did that. They were just like, the Ericksons just got up and left. Didn't say anything. They just kind of like left town, which we've been here and didn't move at all. That kind of happened, and then we just kind of like disconnected because social media wasn't as big back then. But slowly we found our way back through a photo shoot. That was just a cool experience to see you kind of working in my industry with like video, and you were doing a model. Throw up the video of Emilio doing the boxing edit. It was cool to like feel like I'm back in my hometown again, not because of like where I'm at, but because of the people. Especially having you as a friend back then so close, and then it's like, oh, I'm kind of like reconnecting. And I've slowly been reconnecting with people in Mokina as I've gotten older that I was friends with when I was little, which
Yeah.
I think is really cool to see like lives change as we get older. But yeah, that's what we're here today, because me and Emilio have connected so much and grown together so much just in the past like 2 years. Now we're here on a podcast just because we want to document it, and we just want to talk about kind of that journey, what we went through personally together, and how we got to where we are now, and also like what we want for our future.
Yeah, I will step in and just do a little introduction. Emilio Espinoza, family man, professional, sales broker,
Just leave it at like family man.
wannabe David Goggins.
This dude is a monster in the gym, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, more importantly, man of God. And
That's the most important.
exactly, I think you hit the nail with us connecting. I think recently, within the past probably 3 to 4 months. But I wanted to say that a reason why I'd want to have this podcast, and I know we'll be having future ones, whether it be individually or together, is I feel that me and Devin have had abnormal journeys to where we're at, as opposed to the typical individual at our age. You know, most kids go to high school, go to college, have fun, get whatever corporate job, work that 9 to 5, more so spend their time in their 20s having fun. And Devin and I connected because that energy that we attracted was something that we were growing inside of each other. The absence of not having what we know we deserved and what we were chasing. So, I mean, you didn't go to college.
No, I dropped out first semester.
I dropped out after 3 years, so it took me a little longer to learn that.
Yeah, first semester I was like, I'm out.
Yeah, so I think that there are a lot more gentlemen nearing off that typical direction.
100%.
And I think this is a perfect opportunity for them to look at, hey, I might not be there, but there's other people out there like me, and this is an example for them to keep chasing.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of in hopes being the lighthouse for them if they're searching for answers. One, God is always the answer. That will always be your number one. But,
Right.
We're called to be fishers of men, and hoping that this can, like, shed light on those dreams and aspirations of, like, want something, go get it.
Fill the nuts.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great description and point of just an introduction of who you are. Solid man, great dude. Someone who has kept me accountable in a lot of aspects of my life. And Amelia is one of those guys where we are talking on a constant basis now. But he was one of those guys that I know I could not see for 6 months, and we can chat off a call and feel like we just picked up right where we left off. And, and I think it's because we are both chasing our goals that we understand, like, hey, our brotherhood is important. And that's why I feel like we can have this relationship to where you're busy chasing your goals, I'm busy chasing my goals, but collectively we can meet up every once in a while and just, like, do this.
Yeah.
And it's cool because you gain so much knowledge from one another, and just having that vulnerable space as a man, just to, like, here's my goals, here's what I want. Like, yeah, I can hammer home, and I can, achieve so much. I can stay up late and do all this stuff, and it's just different when you got, like, other guys, men behind you to be, like, keeping you accountable. You know what I mean?
Right. I will say, while maybe in the industry our goals are different, I think at the core of what we want is the same. We want to be the best version of ourselves tomorrow. We want to be great in our industry. We want to leave an impact. We want to help others who are in the same position as us get to where we're at, if not in a better position. So I think,
Yeah, I just want people to know that it's possible.
yeah.
Like, you don't need a piece of paper. You don't need a degree to be, like, successful. And more than ever in today's age, like, that is possible. You're seeing people print millions of dollars just off of content, off of selling physical product, TikTok shop. Like, there's kids out here that are 13 years old, 14 years old that are printing millions of dollars without a college degree or even a high school diploma yet. And for people, because the world pushes, like, you need to do this, it is possible.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about just being born and the odds of you being able to be the individual that's bred, it's very small likelihood. So I think just being able, I don't think people, like, when you start to, I don't want to put faith in, like, even aside from faith, my faith is strong, and I think me growing in my ambitions, when you start to realize it's possible, you realize that the excuses that you had were just you against yourself. And so when people say, you're saying, it is possible. It's always been possible, but more than anything, it's possible now. And for me, I tell people that just the fact that you being born, you being able to breathe tomorrow when tomorrow is not guaranteed, is a reason enough for you to know that you made it, and what you want to make of it. Yeah.
Gold. Clip it. This goes for both of us. But when was the moment that you realized, like, shoot, like, you had to look yourself in the mirror and be like, I gotta lock in, and I gotta grow myself as a man?
It's a great question. I think there are different levels of me realizing either one, I really gotta start my self-development on a next level, or there's no coming back from the decision I just made. So for me,
What was that decision?
for both of them?
Well, what was that decision that you just made?
As far as I can't go back from?
Yeah.
The biggest one I'd say when I dropped out of college and lined up my job that I have now. Not that I couldn't go back, but it was for me a decision like that wasn't just an easy decision to come by. It was I got to the point where I told myself if I got to be the only person that supports this decision, then so be it. Like I went to that extent. So that was the biggest decision where I said I can't go back from this.
How'd your family take it?
That is so. So I wanted to make sure I had the job lined up before I said, "Hey, mom, I'm gonna drop out of college," so I could kind of throw some sort of water on the coals or the fire. And so I remember till this day, I told, "Hey, mom and dad, let's go for a walk." And my mom and dad are like, "We don't go for walks." And plus, it was I think there was ice out. It was like right around this weather, so it was probably like 30 out with some snow. And they're like, "Yeah, we'll go on a walk with you." I was like, "Awesome! I really wanted some time with you guys individually, and I just want to talk to you." I'm talking to them about how my internship's going, and we get halfway into our mile walk, and I was like, "Hey, I really love this. I can see myself doing this for the next 5-10 years, and it's something I felt a passion with, and I can see myself dedicating myself to." What would be your thoughts if I just didn't finish school and pursued this job? And my mom was laughing. She's like, "That's so funny. Like, I love that you found what you're looking for, but you're gonna get that degree." Like, she laughed. Like, it was just like a change in her. She was like, "Huh? No, you're gonna finish that degree."
Dang.
And my dad's like, "Yeah, that's cool. We support you with whatever you do." My dad was taking it really serious because he felt he was catching on. My mom, not so much. She just took it as a joke.
Yeah.
And when we finished the walk, I was going to tell him, "Hey, I have this job lined up and I'm not going to go to school." I was around that decision, but when my mom joked around it, for me, when someone tells me I can't do something, it makes me want to do that thing even more. And so I was like I was probably like 75% with my decision. And when I got laughed at by my mom, it became 105%. And so I didn't tell my mom at that point. She got a little frustrated because I think she was like, "You better not be taking this decision serious." I said, I don't know.
Back in your head, you're like, I'm doing it.
Exactly. And I was supposed to be doing summer school at that time, was not doing the classes. I had 2 part-time jobs that thought I was making money. I wasn't making any money. But I told my dad, I was like, "Hey, I think I'm all in." And he said, "Just know that I support you in everything you do, but you have to support you." And I told him, "No problem. I've come to the decision. If I got to be the one to support it, I'm going to do this all in." He said, "That's amazing, and I'm gonna be here to support you." And when my dad told me, it hit me because I was like, "Oh, I thought I was gonna have to be the only person to support this." I remember telling my mom. She said, "Hey, are you doing the summer school classes?" I said, "No," and I just was straight faced. And she said, "You better not. You better finish those classes with A pluses." I said, "I'm dropping out of school and I'm pursuing this job." And she started crying, and
That's the worst feeling when you have made a decision that makes your mom cry.
exactly, because as a child, you never
You don't want to disappoint them.
disappoint. Yeah, that is the far last thing. Like, obviously, as kids, you mess up, so you make mistakes. Disappointment, like when your parents say that you're disappointed you, that's it hits you differently.
It's worse when they're like, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Exactly.
Like that's a stab to the heart because
Yeah.
I'm like, dang, bro. Like they lost trust in me.
Yeah.
Versus like, oh, he just did something wrong. He's stupid. Like this is like, I don't know. Yeah.
Right. So my mom didn't talk to me for a whole week. We lived in the same house. Our rooms were next to each other, so you can imagine, me being a mama's boy, and me loving my mom, and having to make a decision that she was gonna be not happy with. So
That's a hard decision. Like
was.
just as those beginning stages of like becoming an entrepreneur and that baby form of like I'm gonna do something that maybe my parents don't believe in or they don't think it's possible.
Right.
And like there is going to be some repercussions with that. And it's hard because in the beginning it puts like a mental stress on you. And I don't know if you felt this, but when I had that conversation with my parents of like, hey, I'm dropping out of college, like I'm starting this business with two of my buddies, and like I'm gonna pursue photography and videography and like just being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Um, I came home from college and I was like, I like my professor told me too. She's like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "What do you mean? Like, what am I doing here? It's college. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do in order. Like, graduated high school and now I'm going to college and now this." And my professor's like, "But you know what you're doing." I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Your photography and videography, like, you don't need to be here. And like, I'm telling you that so you can save money, but like, it kind of like once she said that to me, I went home. On the way home, I remember I was like, why am I wasting money going to class that I already know? And the professor is like, what are you doing here? Why aren't you making money instead of spending money on what you already know? And I was like, wow, that's a good point. Like I could be making money right now doing this. I just have to figure out how to do it because I have the skill. And when I got home, that was a hard conversation.
Same day, your teacher told you, and you went home and you told your parents, "I'm gonna drop out."
Well, it was just one of those things like you can't get out of your head.
Right. Was it the same day though that your teacher told you, and then you went home?
I'm not 100% sure,
Okay.
but it must have been the week of the day after, but I just didn't go back. And I remember talking to them, and I was like, "Hey, I'm pursuing this," and they're like, "First question is, how are you gonna make money?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't have the answer. I don't have a plan in place for you, but I'm gonna figure it out. I'm going to figure it out." And I think once I like had that moment of telling my parents like, I know you guys don't know what's going on, and I'm going to do my own thing that might scare you because you don't know where it leads, but you know where the college route leads. Like that's scary, especially because your parents invest in you all their life and they want the best for you. And what they know is like college is the good route. That's why every parent wants their kid to go to college. But like that was the moment when I said it to them, when those words came out, I'm gonna figure it out. That was like a promise I made to myself. Okay, now that I said it to them, I'm going to figure this out. Because if not, I'm screwed. Like there's no going back. They're not paying for my classes if I go back. Like this is like all or I just screwed up. You know what I mean? Um, and so I was working at my dad's shop. I was getting gigs on the side. I moved out of my house at 19. It was me, to be honest. It was me. After that, there was kind of like a rough patch with my parents. And looking back on it now, it was me being immature. And I think it was God's vision for me. In times you don't understand. But basically, my mom's like, you got to find somewhere else to live. If you're not gonna go to school, you're not you know acting right and living right, like you're gonna have to find somewhere else.
Wow.
Yeah, that's when I moved to the city at 19. I That's where the like grind started.
You
for
doubled
me.
down.
That's where I had to, bro. I moved to the city with $700 in my bank, no car, no job. Like the only job that I've ever had was at my dad's company, and now I'm like, shoot, I'm in the real world. I'm 19. Like, I asked my buddy, hey, can I like live with you until I find a place to live? I lived on his couch. Like, I lived on a couch for 30 days with 2 bins of clothes and my photography gear. And I worked at a Potbelly for money. And within 30 days, I was able to get photography clients, get an apartment in Gold Coast, and like just slowly change. And what was crazy was I remember when I was like, hey mom, I just got an apartment in Gold Coast. Like I just signed. She's like, in Gold Coast. Like, that's, anyone knows that. Anyone knows Chicago, they know that Gold Coast is so expensive. One of the most expensive places to live in. And obviously it was during COVID, and I got a great deal. And I was living with a buddy that was kind of on the same path as me. And it worked out, Garrison. And once I said that, I could see the shift in my parents of support. Like, I wasn't intentionally looking to prove them wrong, but it was like me just doing because I had to. That, like, when you're focused on doing, you don't really have to worry about those things. And like, oh, I'm waking up every morning and like grinding so I can prove them wrong. It's more of like, I'm proving to myself, like, I said what I said and I have to do it. So when I got the apartment, she was like, oh, let me come to the apartment. Like, let me get you some things for your apartment. Like, let me see it. And that's where the grind just like started for me on my self improvement.
So I probably agree for both of us. I mean, tell me if you agree. The moment, like I said initially, the moment where there was no going back, and then where you had to start the self-development, where they weren't too far from each other, but they were different points of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I said that was honestly like that part of my life from 19 to when I came back and moved in with my parents.
When did you move back?
I moved back 2020. I think it was 2022. Like, start of 2022.
How did that conversation segment back into your parents,
Hey, Mom, I'm negative $3 to my name. I remember the day that I had to call my mom and be like, I'm broke. I have negative $3 to my name. I just finished paying my last payment of rent. She's like, I'm coming to the city. I'm coming to pick you up right now. And you're going to move back in. And you're going to work for me and Dad again. And it felt like I was taking a humongous step backwards. But in reality, I learned so much about myself. I learned how money worked. I learned about the business side of things. And I had a huge clientele following in Chicago now. So it was like I was able to come back to my house like a new man. And that's when I realized, like, okay, I was being immature when my mom told me I had to find somewhere else to live. Like, I was immature with money. And, like, when I moved back home, it was like a new position for me to be in. Like you're in the same environment, but you're just a changed person. So, like, your environment is like different. Does that make sense? So I had a good conversation with my parents, and
that aura was really coming out.
well, my parents were just like, you see what we're talking about? Like, do you see, like, you did it on your own and look what happens and like all this stuff. In the year and a half that I lived in the city, bro, I was traveling like 2 times a month. I was in different states, like California, Las Vegas for 3 weeks with a record label and penthouses left and right. Like, I was in Florida, Miami, New York, you name it. I was everywhere. Like, I felt like I lived three years in a year and a half. And I experienced so much, and I figured out what I wanted and what I didn't want. And that came with a lot of pain of, like, looking at myself in the mirror at like 3 a.m. and being like, what am I doing? Like, I'm thinking I'm making it, but I'm not really doing anything. At least I thought at that moment. But I had to go through that rough patch of like that life to experience like I don't want that lifestyle. You know what I mean? Yeah. And when I came home, my parents like really sat me down and they saw like I'm starting to change, like being more respectful and like just caring about how money worked and like saving and doing this and really like honing in on who I was. I was like, this is the time for me to level up. And like I would say I feel like we all have, as entrepreneurs, we all have different phases of like leveling up. Like each level prepares you for the next one. And the big like moment that I realized I needed to lock in was when my dad passed. That was like all the stuff that I learned prior. Like, I'm glad he got to see me in that of who I was becoming as like an actual man for a little bit, and he didn't have that memory of me being like some punk kid trying to make it, thinking he's making it, who just dropped out of college, moved to the city, like doing all these things. But I'm glad he got to see of like, okay, he recognized he failed and he's rebuilding, but he's rebuilding himself in the way that he's actually going to go somewhere. And that for me was the biggest blessing, that I was able to move back in and be with my dad, and he could see that version of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the demeanor changed with me and him, like our relationship, and it was a beautiful thing before he went.
If he could see you now, which I know he is, but
Yeah, that's one of the hard things. Is I wish I could have started this sooner, but God has a plan for everything, and his death sounds wrong, but his death was planned and according to God's plan. Everyone has their time. We don't know when, but God has a time for everyone. And his was December 16th, 2022. Yeah. And I remember when I got the call, my mom called me, and she was just like, I was upstairs working with Gabe and Chase, and I just had a feeling like the call was going to come through. Because I went to bed every single night for almost 2 months thinking, like, is my dad going to die tonight? And, like, that, usually when you're in the ICU, you either make it or you don't. Like, it's either a day or two you're in there.
yeah.
This was 2 months. And, like, that did some damage to me. Going to bed every single night wondering if your dad's going to die. And you have a reason to. Because the doctors are telling you, like, hey, call the kids. Like, tell them to come say goodbye. And then next week, it's like, he's going to make it. And the next week, it's like, he's not doing good. And, like, that emotional just back and forth. Like, wondering if my dad's going to die. And I can't be sure if I wake up to, the morning and I get a call from my mom saying, like, sorry, Dev, he's gone. But I was here, and my mom called me. Could hear it in her voice. I already knew. And she was just like, are you by anyone? I was like, yeah, I mean, Gabe and Chase are here, and we're just working. She's like, well, like, make sure you hold on to them. And I was like, why? She's like, because your dad just passed. And I was like, okay. Like, all right, I can't do anything. But all the built up emotion of 2 months just like released. Like, the answer was given to me. Like, he's not here anymore. And I was like, okay, I love you, and we're gonna get through this. Because just as much as me as a son, like, that's the person she loved. And I hung up, and I went straight to work. I went back to work. I didn't go home. I didn't leave. I sat down at my computer and just got back to work. And I think that was the moment of, like, realization of, like, bad stuff's gonna happen all the time, but you can't let it define you. And yeah, like, in hindsight, should I probably, called my loved ones and, I'm sorry, like, I love you guys and this, like, yes. But in that moment, like, work was all I knew. And I was with my closest buddies in the room, and we were locked in, and, like, I felt home, and, like, I didn't want to leave. And that was the biggest moment that I realized I like, I need to lock in, or I need to build myself as a man, because the man that I believed in isn't here anymore. And that was like, I looked in the mirror and I was like, Dad's not here anymore. Like, you're on your own. Like, you got to be that man now. You got to be that man for Mom. You got to be that man for your little brother Logan, who's 16, who just lost his dad. That was the moment.
It's powerful.
God has a plan for everything. And to be honest, through that whole thing, I found so much love and joy and just patience with God.
There's no harder lesson, I think, than anybody could.
Losing a parent as a man is the worst thing that you can go through. I will say that, like,
Yeah.
But that's why it gives me so much integrity when things go wrong. Because I'm like, if I got through my dad passing, like, I can get through anything. Because there is nothing that is more painful than losing your parent. Especially when you know they weren't supposed to go yet. Like, most parents usually go when they're 70, 80. My dad was in his mid-50s. And at 21 years old, that is the worst thing ever. And I couldn't even imagine what my little brother Logan was going through at 16. I can't. And I look at him, I'm like, dude, you're more of a man than me. Like, any 16-year-old would have stuck in video games, whatever, eating his life away and all this stuff. But this dude, straight to the gym. You've seen how big he is.
Yeah, kid's great. Kid's
like,
big.
He took that situation and turned it positive.
Yeah, there was 2 roads, and he picked the high one.
He doubled down.
Both of you.
Yeah. He has been a huge asset to my life ever since my dad died. It's because he's my little brother. Like, he doesn't have a dad anymore. He doesn't have that man to look up to. So, as an older brother, like, I want to be that for him. I want to be that good role model. I want to see him win. I want to see him be successful. Especially because the old man, like, every guy, I don't care who you are, if you say, oh, I hate my dad and all this, like, I don't have a relationship with him. Like, every man looks for the approval from their dad as a man.
Yeah, I'd honestly probably say people that have not the greatest relationship probably more so than people that do.
100%.
Because if you sit there complaining about somebody that you say that doesn't have a big role in your life, but you're complaining about them, and it's not just a parent, it's just whatever somebody's complaining about. You think your manager, your significant other, to say that they don't mean that much, and then you sit there and complain about the situation you are in. It's, first of all, it's selfish. Second of all, it's very untelling of what you're speaking about.
That's true. That is a great point. I didn't think about that. That is a very good point. Yeah, why would you be talking about it if you didn't care? And I think deep down it's just validation and, like, hurt that you want from them. You know what I mean?
Scars.
Scars.
Things that were unsettled, untold, things that you didn't want to confront.
let me ask you a question.
Yep.
As a man, do you think it's childish? Do you think it's soft to be vulnerable?
I can obviously speak on my experience with my relationship with my dad. My dad was someone that grew up, put your feelings aside for your loved ones. You know, if, like you said, if they're the ones going through the hurt, you being there to console them, be the one to have strength for and with them. So I think there's different levels of vulnerability. I think what I want to first address is the statement to be a man is there's no right answer. There's like my definition of being a man is completely different of your definition of being a man. I don't think there's any set definition. I hate when people say, "Oh, this is what you need to do to be a man. Oh, this is what it takes." Like, first of all, you have no idea what I've been through, and I have no idea what you've been through. We can speak about it, but it's very entirely than putting yourself in the shoes of that actual person.
100%.
So
not putting manhood in a box.
correct. No, 100%. I know you're not going there. I would say as a man, I don't believe that happiness is an objective for an individual wanting to be successful and having a great life. I think I'm very family orientated, so I'm happy for my family to be happy at the cost of my happiness. With that said, as far as vulnerability, I'm someone that believes that I'll put aside my feelings for the destination that I'm going on. I don't believe that me being tired, however level of sleep, what happened yesterday, should dictate what time I get up tomorrow. If I have a job, my objective is to create a family, my objective is to provide for them, then my emotions are significant in my objective to accomplish the success that I want for my family. That was a little complicated. However, connecting that to vulnerability, I think it's good to be in tune with your emotions as someone pursuing a traditional manhood, maybe put that. I think it's good to still be vulnerable, but there's obviously times to pick and choose. If I'm on a meeting with a client, that's not really a great time for me to be vulnerable. If I'm,
I think that's a great point. There's times as a man that you should be vulnerable.
correct. Should men be vulnerable? Yes, 100%. Is there times to pick and choose? Correct.
That's a good answer because I feel like the world makes it seem like there's so many extremes. Like one, men should be opened and let everything out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's this extreme where it's like, I don't cry. Like I don't shed a tear. Like
Yeah.
stab me. I'm not gonna cry. Whatever. I'm just a straight man. But I think there's a fine line of like being real with yourself and like, all right, cut the act. Like deep down, we're all going through stuff. And as a man, I think you should have men that you talk to in times of vulnerability that they can build you up and they can listen to you and say like, they're not going to judge you. You know what I mean? Especially if, just like we're doing right now. Like, how many times have we sat down and been vulnerable with one another and it's like, man, I feel so much better about my problem because I expressed it to another man who's also going through other problems as a man.
Yeah. I think it's every time we've talked.
Literally every time.
Yeah. Well, so with that said, I want to ask you a great question. At what point, with your dad's passing, did you realize maybe it's time for me to be vulnerable?
I think when I was bottling up all my emotions and like, it's not affecting me. Like, his death isn't affecting me. And guess who it was affecting? The people around me. Because I was bottling it up. And then, I'd get pressured and then it'd come out on other people. But also, there was a time where I needed to be vulnerable because my mom stopped me, and I know I told you this. But my mom stops me one day and says, I was drowning out myself from the pain with work. If I could just focus on work and not deal with the pain, not drown it out and just keep working, keep working, keep working, grind harder, do this, that I wouldn't feel the pain anymore, which was wrong. And I remember my mom told me, she's like, if you keep working like this, you are going to end up like your dad. Man, that hit. That hit me so hard because my mom, who just lost her husband, I don't want my mom to experience that with me. And that was kind of a time I was like, okay, I need to take a step back. I am hurting. I just lost my dad. And I gotta be real with myself. Like, I can't just act like everything's fine. And grief, I was feeling things that I didn't know what they were, and it was grief. And a lot of people don't, like, when they lose someone, they don't know what this feeling is, and it's underlying grief. And that's when I had to be vulnerable and, like, talk to my mom, talk to my family about things, and just kind of, like, take a little step back from work and, like, kind of look at myself and, like, I need to correct myself right now. And I need to be vulnerable and stop putting up this tough act in front. And that was the time that, like, when I had that, I felt like, oh, I'm less of a man now. But in reality, I was becoming more of a man because I was addressing my pain. It's hard to do as a man. And it's hard to do because you don't want to seem like soft, you know?
It's one of the hardest things.
It's an ego thing, for sure.
Ego, pride.
Ego, pride.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the time that I, like, had to be vulnerable in a sense. And it's that honestly has made it easier for me to be vulnerable with moving outside of my circle of family and now being vulnerable with you and being vulnerable with my business partners and, like, the entrepreneurial world, the people who actually, care to know about how I'm doing. It's been a lot easier to do that. And it's benefited me tremendously, just having those conversations and being vulnerable.
What would you tell to somebody sitting across from you that's going through something similar, for in the case they either didn't have anybody to go through or they were trying to be a manly man and, hide their feelings? What would be your recommendation to become vulnerable, or how could they go about?
With losing a parent and stuff? Or just anyone?
A parent, or they're just at a low in their life. They were in a similar position with the apartment.
If I had to tell someone that, like, how to grow in vulnerability, correct? Or just kind of be open to that, I would say is, like, first address, like, the situation. Like, do that thing where you look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, like, I don't have it figured out. Addressing the problem first is the first thing. Second is, like, having that realization of, okay, like, I'm going to put my ego, I'm going to put my pride to the side, and I'm going to, open up about my feelings to the correct people. There are people you should not open up your feelings to, and you should be aware of those people. But there's people that you can go to that love you no matter what. Start with family, and just open up to them. Like, barriers down, open up to them. And I'm not gonna say every time, like, it's gonna go smooth, but 10 out of 10 times or 9 out of 10 times, like, a person that loves you and cares for you genuinely, they'll want to help you. You know what I mean? What would you say to someone?
First and foremost, I would say to reflect. Whether that be look in the mirror, probably right up, spot on. Reflect. It doesn't have to be in a mirror. Take time. We're in a society where people are constantly on technology, and so we mirror our thoughts with whatever we see in front of us.
Facts.
So honestly, I'd say go in a dark room, but yeah, that's probably,
Some Batman type
yeah,
stuff right there.
I do. Because it helps you cloud the noise. It helps you really eliminate all distractions. If you can just sit there and, it can be in the bathroom, it can be in your bedroom, it could be just somewhere you can go and you know that you can cloud all the distractions and really taking time and looking at yourself and saying, this is what happened. This is what I'm feeling. This is some of the effects that's been at the cost of what has happened, and saying whether you like this person that you're becoming or growing into. And most 9 out of 10 times it's usually, hey, this isn't who I am. This isn't how the relationship. This isn't the how I want my relationships around me to go. I'm hurting the people around me, and I thought I was doing better. And once you've really taken time to reflect, think about some of the actions and thoughts, maybe inactions, that have been the cost of whatever the situation is, going back to those people that you love and saying, basically taking a knee to them, saying, hey, that's not who I am. And I appreciate you giving me grace.
Takes a man to do that.
Yeah, it's for me especially. And I times 100, because I think it all has to dwell with me growing up. I didn't give this background story, but I grew up short, chubby, minority, moved out of Chicago Heights, which is not like the suburbs out here, and just constantly feeling like I stood out and had to prove something. And I don't know, I just maybe your parents always love you, and when you're told by your parents you're fine the way you are, and then you go out to class and you don't fit in, you don't feel like you fit in, you're constantly feeling like you want or need to do things to approve of others. It's hard to grow up 20 years later and say, hey, some of these actions grew me into a great man, but I'm not perfect, and some of those scars are coming out and affecting the people that I love. It's hard. I'd say even now. And anybody listening to this, or you listen to podcasts, they can speak on subjects, whether they're an expert, master class. At one point, they weren't masters, and still people that are masters are always perfecting it, so nobody's ever perfect.
100% agree with that.
Yeah.
This kind of tailors off of like personal development and just growth with yourself and others. How would you say, like, having an inner circle, people like you and me, just our relationship, how do you think those things affect your personal journey?
I think it's a huge impact. I love the quote, you are who you surround yourself with. You are the sum of the 7 people you surround yourself with. I think it's all about energy for me. You want to surround yourself with great energy. For those of you that are familiar with the Tates, they bring up a story of, you can know absolutely nothing about ice cream, but if you surround yourself with ice cream experts, at one point or another, you're going to know what it takes to make chocolate ice cream, what it takes to make vanilla ice cream, just by being in the room and listening to the conversation. So, branching off of that, I believe that having people like you in my circle have allowed me to think beyond the whatever goals I set myself. I've been able to not only set the tone for that goal, but also set the tone to push even for higher things that I didn't even initially think I was going to do. So recently, or I guess not recently, but 3 months ago I did a half Ironman, and 2 months before that I did an ultra marathon.
This is what I'm talking about. The guy's killer in the gym.
I think the ignition was through a heartbreak, and then us connecting, several other people connecting, these all these people were talking about, hey, I had no prior experience, and I just started. And for me, I was almost looking for that pain. I think anybody can relate to like a heartbreak, but yeah, the mixture of having that happen to me and having that support
Yeah.
is, I felt like I could do anything. Like I'd be on track to do the full Ironman if I wasn't training for these hybrid races, which I will be doing in 2025. So be on the lookout for that. What about you?
The more as I go on in life and just this personal development,
You brought. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What does it mean? Like, what does personal development mean to you?
being a better version of yourself every day, knowing that the journey doesn't end. Like a lot of people think, personal development's like, oh, I'll get this physique and then I'm good. Or I'm going to make my relationships this way, this good. I'm going to love this person this way and then I'm good. Like, personal development doesn't end. Like, there is no, like, I'm good now. I'm great. But personal development to me is like, yeah, it's one, being the most disciplined you can be, because I think that's the hardest thing to do is be disciplined with yourself. But two is just being a better version of yourself every single day, especially when you don't want to or feel like it. And that's where the discipline comes in.
At what point when you knew that you had to start your self development? How did you know what to attack? What did you start attacking? At what point was the people you surround yourself part of that self development?
First thing was my mental and like my health. And the only reason it was my health was because my dad. That was one reason why he passed, was his health. And I said, I'm going to be healthy. Like, I'm going to take something from him in a lesson. And I started going to the gym 5 a.m. Like, didn't start at 7, didn't start at 5 p.m. after work. It started at 5 a.m. And that was the shift for me of like getting up early, and just kind of starting my routine and building my routine, for personal development. Because I think in order to have personal development, you have to have a routine. You have to be consistent in some sense, and you have to have order.
You have to have order. Do you think that while you start learning your self development, you know that routine has to become part of it? Because I think you can start your self development by just saying, "Hey, I want to do better for myself." Like that can be the ignition of like.
Yeah, that was, I don't want to put it in like a box. That was my moment. That was my like, okay, I have to build a routine and I have to do this or else I know I won't do it. And I have to make this like, I have to make this not just like a, hey, I'm saying this, like I'm actually doing it, and I am wanting to get better with my personal development and doing that. So yes, a person, first thing that you can do is like address like what the problems are, and mine was my mental, and honestly, it was my mental health, my relationship with God, and the gym. Those three things all kind of correlated with one another. And when I started going to the gym, I started eating right, and I was like, okay, I'm actually, I'm liking going to the gym. I'm my mental health is better during the day, and like I'm actually positive, and I'm being productive, and my relationship with God is flourishing, and like I'm pursuing Him. In that moment, like that was the beginning stages for me of like the turnaround for it. Um, Personal development doesn't always mean business. Personal development is investing, and it's investing in yourself and who you are. And yeah, it was working out, and that's why we reconnected. Was, hey, like, well, one, it was the shoot, but two, it was like, hey, let's catch a lift together. Like, I could see we're both on this self development. Like, let's just catch a lift and chop it up. And then it was like, hey, let's catch another lift. And then we just kind of reconnected through that. What would you say like your beginning thing is? Like what was that moment of like, okay, like I'm on this journey and I recognize this now. Like what was the first thing you did?
The first point where I wanted to do better for myself, I might have not realized it was self-development, but I'm instinctively realizing now is when I turned 16 at the Oaks, the recreational gym that's near us.
Shout out the Oaks,
Shout out the
Mokina
Oaks.
OG.
Yeah, for real. The whole chubby minorities, I didn't want to identify as that picture because I just didn't like looking in the mirror. I
So
didn't like that version of myself.
an identity crisis, kind of.
100%. I wanted to look good and feel good. I wanted to remove my shirt and be confident and take pride in, there goes pride again. I wanted to be happy with, or not necessarily, I mean, be happy as well, but feel confident,
In your own skin.
correct, in looking across the mirror. So yeah, once I turned 16, that was when I was able to call. I think I don't know if I took the day off, but maybe it was a half day for school. I went and got my license, and then I made a call to the gym to get to be able to add to my parents' workout plan or whatever
Yeah.
to get on there. So yeah, so that was probably the first time. And then when I started, one of the biggest things that I knew I wanted to do as knowing that I wanted to go into sales was working on my communication.
Did those two correlate?
They correlate 100%. When you start looking good, you feel better in your shoes. Once you start feeling better, you look at yourself differently, and others look at you differently, and you want to almost keep up with the image of this individual's working on himself. And part of somebody working on themselves is someone setting themselves out from the crowd. And I think a big way, especially nowadays, if you to work on anything, first of all, it's the gym, and I'd say second of all, communication.
I think, and to be fair, let's clear this up. It's not that you want to perceive yourself as this guy who knows it all, because I think a lot of people, when they see people on their
Great point.
development, they get like, oh, you must think you're better than everyone else. You must think that, you're just dandy and you're perfect and you're going to the gym. Look at you, woo woo, and like, cool. And I think, like, to people, one, it's them projecting their insecurities on you. But to be honest, they're kind of proving your point that you're not that person because you are on a self-development journey. Like, if you thought that, you wouldn't be doing those things. You know what I mean?
Right.
So just to put that out there very clear, it's not because you think you're better than everyone else. It's because you want to maintain the hard work that you are putting into yourself.
Yeah, just constantly looking to improve different ways, 1% better every day. And what we do every day for people that can speak is communicate what comes out of your mouth and how are other people interpreting it. What are people doing when they hear what's coming out of your mouth?
Dang.
Yeah, something I'm learning about now is the level of at which one person blinks. If they're blinking faster, it's a sign that their stress levels are higher.
Dude, you're getting into like psychological game over here.
Yeah, and it just comes with you wanting to learn one extra thing. And that's something that I learned from an Instagram reel, which everybody has access to. But yeah, something that the FBI did is when they interrogated people, they would look them in the eye and ask them a question. And depending on how that individual answered while looking in the eyes, they'd be able to dictate, is this person telling the truth? Is this person nervous in the situation that we're providing across
That's
from
crazy.
them? Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And being in sales, I'm constantly looking to get that.
Interrogating them.
Yeah.
Not interrogating, but kind of.
Yeah.
You're interrogating them with good intentions.
Yeah, people want to work with people that invest not only into the vision, but in themselves. Like, how far is this person willing to go? This person is not only willing to invest in themselves, but the fact that they're willing to invest in themselves lets me know that the vision that they're explaining to me is something that they'll go to the end of the earth for.
It's worthwhile.
Yeah, we just continually said to uphold that image. I love getting into psychology and things of that sort. And it's not really a problem, but when I have gone on dates, I'm talking to somebody right now.
My boy's in love.
But just whatever, whenever you're sitting next to people, it's awesome to see those things. Like when you start the development, you get so excited, you get antsy. You're like, wow, like I'm applying this information that
Yeah.
I'm learning. And as you grow, you got to learn to not that you can't get antsy, but you know how to control it.
Mm-hmm.
So, perfect example, when I closed my first shipment, I think I won like $5 off of it. My commission was like $5, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm capable of this." Well, now, you know, I'm obviously closing bigger deals, and you just don't want to get antsy because clients are going to see it, or you're going to come off as this may be too bigger than what you can handle. So does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like you do the deal, it's done. You're confident that you got it done, and then behind closed doors, you can be like, celebrate a little bit.
Yes.
With yourself in a good way. Don't go popping bottles and spending money and doing all this, but like, dude. Sometimes I think honestly that's the problem nowadays with just, I guess it could be anyone, but like take time to like congratulate yourself with small wins or wins like, yeah, like this is great. I did this, you know? But don't get comfortable. That's the other side of like winning. Don't get comfortable where you're at. Take the win, congratulate yourself, like feel good. Now let's go get the next one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to look into the camera and say, when you start this self-development journey, you will win. It's not a matter of when or at what point you will. And when you start to see that, acknowledge them, because I'm somebody that's, instead of making small wins, I did the third. You're going to just start hitting these milestones and you're going to degrade them because you're automatically going to be looking at the next one. So take time, whether it's 5 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't think it should be more than a week, but acknowledge the win, tell somebody about it. So I think that's the most underrated piece of advice that anybody that's going into self-development can get, because I didn't do it. I'm trying to do it now because I think it's normal to be like, all right, this, like I did this, but this isn't, like I want to be here, and these other people are doing this here, and I know I can compete with them. I'm ready to just jump into the next milestone. I'll say the last thing. That'll be the last thing I say. As Devin and I are sitting across from each other, this is our first podcast. Catch us in 10 years and mock my words. Not only will we be hitting bigger goals,
100%.
but we'll be in the shoes of the vision that we have now for ourselves.
Ooh, what a closer! What a closer!
That's how confident I am.
That was powerful. Yeah, and I'm confident too. I'm confident too. There will not be any stopping. I know that.
Thank you, Devin.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on and just being vulnerable. Episode 2 coming soon.